Well, welcome back to the Deep Voice channel. I've got something a little bit different for you to hear today. I've got a top 5 list. So without further ado, let's go deep and talk about my top 5 horror films of all time. The first movie on this list that we're actually going to be talking about is a 2003 South Korean horror movie. This was written and directed by Kim Jee-Woon, and the title is A Tale of Two Sisters. This movie is on this list because it's the only movie in the last 2 decades which has seriously scared me, genuinely started my imagination running wild. I remember there is a scene in this movie, it's based in a kitchen and has something to do with a sink area, I won't say any more. But this particular scene actually had me pause the movie for a break in tension, go downstairs, and when I was down there, I was turning on every light in the entire household. This is because I was imagining creepy things in every corner and crevice of the house. So this is something I've not really experienced since I was a child, because horror films in general don't have this type of effect on me. So this had to be included for that reason alone. The premise is that a young girl is released from a mental health institution. She is reunited with her sister at her house, and strange happenings begin all over the building. The woman who plays a stepmother in this film has some seriously good acting in very creepy moments, and the 2 young girls do an excellent job. The cinematography is beautiful, the tragic elements are in there as well as the very scary moments, and this has to be up there because it's not predictable at all. There are lots of very creepy moments that you don't usually see rehashed in most horror films, and just for its ingenuity, its originality, it has to be on this list. But obviously the main reason is because it actually scared me. So A Tale of Two Sisters comes in at number 5. Up next on my top 5 list is yet another South Korean horror movie, this time from 2004, and written and directed by Su-Chang Kong. This title is R-Point, and I remember renting this movie from a Blockbusters when that was a thing, and a friend and I watched it and we were really scared. So the general premise is that a Korean base receives a radio transmission of a lost platoon. It's set during the Vietnam War, and they send out a platoon to go and investigate this island. This film reminds me a little bit of Jacob's Ladder. There's some Full Metal Jacket in there as well, obviously with the theme Vietnam War. But it has some very chilling psychological moments in this film. You don't really know what's real, what's imagined. And I remember there is a scene in this film that focuses around a photograph and a discovery that one of the soldiers makes when reviewing this photograph. And this really chilled me to the bone. The radio transmissions, when they come over, they are very scary, very effective with the way that they sound, the crackling, the breakup of the voices of these unknown soldiers coming over. And there are elements of gore in here, there are elements of psychological manifestations, and the acting in here is great, it's very realistically done. The cinematography, once again, beautiful. I think this is a running theme with my appreciation of South Korean cinema, which I feel like their cinematography, dialogue, and acting are, very, very top tier. This film is worth checking out. I never really hear anybody mention this film, so it must be another one that's semi-unknown. Well worth watching if you're looking for something chilling and, again, original. Go check this out. This is number 4. Number 3 on my list is a 2015 folk horror movie written and directed by Robert Eggers. This is The Witch. Robert Eggers is one of my favourite directors currently working today. This film is very bleak and very oppressive in terms of its cinematography. It's a very desaturated palette, and the acting by Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Ineson is fantastic. This film is a slow burn, so you have to stick with it, and has one of the most chilling endings I've seen to any film in recent years. I really found it quite disturbing, and it almost invoked a deep sense of dread within me in the final shots of this film. There are some very cool elements with some of the wildlife here, which I found very interesting, and the effects that they decided to use. And of course, with it being a Robert Eggers production, the wardrobe and the historical accuracy is front and foremost in his thought process when developing this film. So, very accurate for this period. I think it's set 1630s, so very accurate wardrobe, and the sense of dread is palpable in this film. I think it's one of the best looking horror movies in the last 15 years, and it definitely deserves to be in this list. So that's my number 3. Number 2 on my list is 1982 horror film directed by John Carpenter and starring Kurt Russell. It is, of course, The Thing. Now, this movie I have watched so many times, I remember almost every scene, and it never gets old. It's based on a team of researchers in Antarctica, and something is unearthed which, well, let's just say they're going to hope it wasn't unearthed. And this film is fantastic as it invokes a sense of paranoia, and the tension, especially in scenes with multiple characters, is so high and so believable. The acting here is fantastic. The physical props and effects in this film are beyond most. I would say only rivaled by movies like Alien and maybe Jurassic Park in terms of realism. And the twists and turns it takes are great. The ending, fantastic. There's nothing I would change about this movie. Kurt Russell is excellent. He's a badass in this film. And I think every aspect is well done. It's creepy, it's paranoia-inducing, it's dread-inducing. It has every element you want in a horror film, and everybody should have seen it. If you haven't, you have to watch this. This is one of the best horror movies of all time. I don't even feel like it's a subjective thing. Objectively, it is that good. So that comes in as number 2. Coming in at number 1 for me is a film I watch multiple times a year. I know almost every bit of dialogue and every scene as it comes out. It's directed by Stanley Kubrick. It's from 1980. It stars Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson, and the title is, of course, The Shining. This film has everything. It also has some of the best acting I think I've personally ever seen in terms of Jack Nicholson's performance. It's so good. The premise is obviously that a family take over a hotel just for the winter as caretakers, and the isolation leads to one or two interesting and scary deteriorations in mental health. There are, of course, paranormal parts to this film, some linked to Native Americans, but you can interpret this film in many ways, and I think that way that people have different ideas about what's happening just adds to the overall atmosphere and scary elements within this film. So as I say, Jack Nicholson's performance, 10 out of 10. I love the scene where he's starting to get very angry, very animated, and he's lashing out at the walls as he walks towards the ballroom. The lighting in this film is great. The setting itself is almost a character in itself. It actually changes throughout the film, so chairs that were there in certain scenes are not there in the next shot of the same scene. There are rooms which lead to nowhere because there are walls that don't make any sense in the placement of this layout of the Overlook Hotel. There are so many elements that you can uncover here on each viewing that I feel like this is a masterclass. This is my favourite horror movie of all time. There's nothing I would change. The soundtrack is great, really foreboding. The shots are mesmerizing. Obviously, there are elements where behind the scenes talk about Stanley Kubrick being a bit of a maverick and doing things in very controlling ways, which wasn't always enjoyable for the cast, especially for Shelley Duvall. Her performance in this is amazing. She really encapsulates a paranoid and fearful mother. The child actor in this, also great, Danny Lloyd. It's not always a case that a child actor can demonstrate the factors that they need to within a film. He does that excellently here. Everything about this film is perfect for me. I love the carpets. I love everything about this film. And I don't think it really needs any explanation. It's open to interpretation. It has great acting, great soundtrack, everything. This is my #1 horror movie of all time, and it will probably always be my favourite horror movie.